I'm not really going to expect a whole lot of people to understand my situation, as even I myself have had my fair share of problems coming to terms with it myself. I have a lot of confusion about what I have seen, and honestly I don't ever think I'm going to have an answer to it. Of course, one thing's for certain. I guess you could say that being a father does a lot to a person, some good and some not so good. Especially when you've been pretty much led off by the woman who claims to love you, yet at the same time abuse the ever-living shit out of you because she can. And yet, no matter what I do, I can never seem to get a break from her actions. I could never, under any circumstance, finally get the peace that I've wanted. Now, I guess I should probably explain my situation a bit better, in hopes that you'll understand what I'm going through at the moment. Well, to start this off, my wife is a piece of shit. In fact, to say a piece of shit would be a disgrace to pieces of shit. She is about as evil can be. Ever since my daughter Emily's birth, she ultimately treated me like I was scum of the earth. Her reasoning for it, you might be asking? Simple. She hated me. And I'm not joking when I say that. She hated the fuck out of me. She hated me because I wasn't the kind of husband to fall into a warped view of reality that she sat there and continuously spread around in her stupid blogs online. I didn't think that she, or any woman in this country, was about as much of a hapless victim, or hold on to this disgusting victim mentality, as I thought she was. I mean, nor would I even bother going with her to her stupid various meetings to get lectured on how much I was a piece of shit for being a man by her other friends, quote unquote. To put it bluntly, she was a misandrist to the ninth degree, and it really did a lot of damage to me mentally and physically because of the constant abuse that she put me through. She would berate me. She would then beat me whenever she wanted to with a belt, and would then use me for her disgusting actions, quote unquote, whether or not I wanted it or not. Oftentimes, it was not. She made my life hell, and because of it, I was practically miserable. There really wasn't much I could do. I couldn't go to the police, nor could I even go and attempt to try and expose her either. I couldn't even sit there and fight back, because apparently society's thing is of, you should never hit a girl kind of deal, which I do agree with, but in this matter, I don't, is just something that honestly will sit there and flip on its head. And even if for some reason I do happen to expose her, or I do manage to finally fight back against her, whether it be through physical or, I don't know, mental kind of way, I know for a full-on fact that she would sit there and use that against me in court, and it would backfire on me, and not only would I not ever be believed by anybody else, but I'd probably be the one going to prison because of her disgusting, manipulative lies. I know that most of you might be wondering why I would even bother staying with this misandrous piece of shit, if she truly treated me that way every single day. The only true reason was my daughter. In fact, my daughter was the only reason why me and her had gotten married to begin with. I loved my daughter with every fiber of my being, and I knew for a fact that if I said anything to the police, I would never get the opportunity to ever see her again. So up until now, I pretty much have been dealing with the pain. I've dealt with the abuse by the monster of a woman and her little club members, just so that my daughter could see me every day. And hell, I'd do it all again in a heartbeat, just for her. She's honestly the light of my life, and any kind of abuse that I'd go through was probably the best feeling in the world just from seeing her happy face each and every day when I walked through that door after work. What I can say for a full-on fact, though, is that compared to her mother, she was nothing like her. My daughter was the most sweetest person that I've ever met. She also knew that what her mother was doing to me was disgusting and wrong, and she would often defend me to keep me away from the wrath of my wife for just a little while longer. She at one point, after seeing me all bruised and bloodied up after my wife had assaulted me for not taking out the trash that day, offered to call the police for me. I told her not to, though, as I didn't want to lose her. Honestly, she was and still is my angel. However, there was one point in my time time in my life where I was afraid that she'd start walking in the footsteps of her mother. And that was through a show that I thought was innocent enough by the name of Caillou. I get it that it might seem a bit of a stretch to say something as innocent as a kid's show could cause, anybody to become, including my daughter, into a psycho, but honestly, have you ever seen or read the reviews on that piece of shit show? Hell, even the reboot itself has these issues with that little brat. Honestly, I guess I'm more of the one to blame when it comes to that kind of thing, as I was the one who wound up buying her the damn thing to begin with. Basically, how it started off was my daughter and I were at Walmart getting a few things for dinner that night. And what was originally supposed to be a 5-minute visit to get the ingredients needed for dinner and then finally heading out was a rather messed up text from my bitch of a wife calling me very slurs unlike because of something that she wound up doing at home and wanted to blame me with. Yeah, not exactly a fun time, to be honest. So, not wanting to deal with her bitchingness, I wound up, making the little trip almost a few hours long. My daughter at first didn't really seem to like it at first, but once I told her about the text that her mother had sent for me, she ultimately understood. Honestly, to say that she was a mature person for her age would be an understatement. So, the trip to Walmart was pretty much spent just getting the food that we needed, followed by checking out various clothing sections of the store and the toy aisle to keep my daughter occupied. After about 30 minutes into this, I could tell that Emily had started to grow rather bored and wanted to go home, but I promised her that if she let me just shop around for another 30 more minutes, that I'd buy her anything that she wanted from the store. This pretty much lightened her up a bit, and she continued to guide me to wherever it was that we wind up going to. Once the hour was up, I told Emily that it was time to pick out her little gift, which she was really excited about. She then directed me to the DVD aisle of the store. She wasn't really a huge fan of toys at the time, and then began looking around for a DVD that she wanted to add to her multitude of collections of shows that she liked watching on a daily basis. It didn't take long for her to come back with a large box set of the show Caillou. I remember looking at it with a bit of curiosity as to why she wanted something like this, especially knowing for a fact that the show was a little bit under her age range. If I had honestly known at the time what this fucking show was truly about, I would have had her pick out another movie or show to buy. I remember asking her if she was sure that she wanted to buy the DVD, to which she of course said yes. So with her decision final, we went to the front of the store, paid for our groceries, and went back home. Upon arrival at the front door, I was met with my wife, who had now brandished a belt that she frequently used to beat me with. Thankfully, my daughter had sprung up to my wife and told her about how today was an amazing day, and that Daddy had gotten her a present and things like that. Pretty much anything to sit there and try and get my wife to not sit there and, screw with me. My wife smiled at my daughter and then threw the belt to the side and barked at me to start making dinner for them. When I walked into the kitchen, my daughter gave me a quick wink. She wound up saving me from getting my ass beaten again. Honestly, there is nothing I could ever do to ever repay her for the amount of amazing things she's done for me. The next few days went by without much of an issue. My daughter continued to watch the show whenever she got the time to do such, usually after school, and everything went by pretty fine. Well, as fine as it could be for me. That is until I started to notice a slight change from my daughter that, at first, I didn't really take too much time to consider, and it really didn't bother me too much. It was relatively small things like not saying thank you after getting a snack and asking for things without pretty much asking in a polite manner. I chalked it up to her just pretty much growing up and or forgetting. I mean, she was 8. It's something anybody could do. Then after another week or two, things started to become a lot more noticeable in her actions and behavior. For one, she started to talk back to me whenever I asked her about something. And then, at least a few times, went on a couple of meltdowns whenever I couldn't afford a specific snack or anything like that she wanted at the store. And her constant desire to hang out with her mother instead of me worried me. This was already starting to raise up some red flags in my mind. Honestly, I thought that my fucking wife had done something about this. Well, actually had something to do with it. But I knew that my daughter never condoned or acted in that kind of manner, so it was very much unlikely that she would have gotten it from her. The final straw came about a month after I had bought those fucking DVDs, when I got a call from her school's principal about my daughter's actions. I asked the principal to specify what it was that she had done, and the principal told me that I just needed to go there, and that there was a lot of them to list, and, well, I needed to be there in person anyway. This made my heart sink to the bottom of my stomach and out of my ass when I heard that for the first time. I made my way to my car and drove all the way down to the school. Upon making my way there, parking it, and then going to the principal's office, I was met with the principal, my daughter sitting at the left seat near the desk, and to my horror, police officer. I was told to take a seat, which I did, and then I was filled in on everything that had happened with Emily. And honestly, I'm quite glad that I was sitting down when the principal listed off the offenses that she had done, as I knew that I'd likely would have fallen to the ground and just died right then and there. The things she did that month were as follows: not listening to the teacher, throwing away her food when it was in time to do so, sticking her tongue out at students on multiple occasions, getting too rowdy at recess, refusing to do her work, lying and yelling at the teachers, calling everybody horrible kind of words that I don't even know if I can sit there and repeat on here, made a ton of kids cry, and oh god, I don't even want to say the last part of it. She spat on people, and lastly, she stabbed a boy in the arm with a pair of scissors that very day that I had came in, after he had tried to get her to lend him a pencil. My jaw had already dropped from my mouth and into the lowest circle of hell when I heard the last one. At least, I knew why the police officer was there. I then asked her if there was any charges brought up by the kid or their parents or whatever, to which the principal thankfully said that there hadn't been any charges filed, and that the only way that that would stay the way that it did is if she was suspended. Which she was. For 2 long weeks. After a few more minutes of listening in on what was needed to be done and what needed to be known, as well as getting some advice from the principal as well for any kind of psychological training or things like that that was necessary, we were both pretty much free to leave for the rest of the day. My daughter didn't speak to me during the ride home. Hell, neither did I. To hear everything that had been said about my Emily like that, and all of it being true, it killed me inside. I honestly should have been pissed as all hell for what she did, but for some reason I wasn't. In fact, I was honestly a lot more curious to know why she had done all those things to begin with and what had caused it. When we both finally went home, my wife thankfully wasn't there, thank God, but I immediately took her into the living room and sat her down, much to her own dismay, and we began talking. "Emily, look," I began. "I'm not angry at you. I'm disappointed with your behavior. Look, sweetie, I don't know what's up. You gotta talk with me here. Why did you do that?" Emily simply crossed her arms and huffed a bit. "Look, I don't know what's been going on recently with you, but if something's bothering you, or, something at home is bothering you, or anything, you can talk with me, right? You don't have to do the things that you did. You could just talk with me." Emily turned to me and glared at me, and then said, "No. I just don't want anything to do with anybody. Everyone is stupid, including you," she hissed. Hearing that word being directed at me felt like a bull had smashed into my chest. Honestly, just from that word, that phrase alone caused me to literally lose my breath. "Sweetie, you don't mean that, do you?" I said, now visibly upset at her. "I don't care," she yelled. I don't want to talk anymore. I just want to watch Caillou, she yelled. Is that what this was all about? That stupid show? Honestly, with your attitude, little missy, I don't think I'm going to even let you watch Caillou for a long time after what you've done, I threatened. Without another word, Emily shot up and glared at me with more hate than I honestly thought a little girl could ever muster at her age. I honestly think I might have struck a nerve at that point, and I was about to feel the wrath of it. I hate you. You're nothing else more than a big, stupid monster, she screamed. I was taken aback for the second time, as I felt my heart shatter in a million tiny pieces at the words that had been uttered from her mouth. She simply stared at me for a bit, huffed once more, and then left to go to her room. I, on the other hand, just sat there on the couch, in shock and completely blank for a while. Then I got up from my seat, made my way to the bathroom, and cried for a good hour or two. Honestly, what had come over my daughter like that? More importantly, what the fuck was with that Caillou show what happened that turned my daughter into that? I had gotten another text from my wife later on that night, belittling me, as she usually does, but at the same time telling me that she wasn't coming home because that night, in her own words, she was going to fuck her boss because he had a bigger schlock than I did. Yeah. She just added more salt to the wound with everything. It made everything worse for me. I didn't really bother making dinner for myself that night. I just wound up going up to the door of my daughter and telling her that she could make whatever she wanted in the freezer. We had a couple of TV dinners there, so at least I knew she wouldn't burn the house down. She didn't really respond to me. And after that, I just left her area and just went to my room. After a few hours or so, I decided to just kind of figure out what in the world had happened. I mean, it wasn't normal to sit there and see her turn from the sweet little girl into almost an exact copy of her mother. I mean, the very fact that she even mentioned Caillou just gave me a sneaking suspicion that show had something to do with it. So, I wound up doing what I possibly could. I made the decision to go and check out that Caillou DVD and watch every single episode on there to see what could have triggered that. Thankfully, though, the DVDs were still in the case in the living room, as that's usually the place where she went and watched them. Although, sometimes she would watch in her room, but mostly on the living room. So at least I didn't have to really worry about having to sneak into my daughter's room to go get them. When I got back into my room, I pulled out my laptop and popped in the first disc of the show, and watched each and every episode on that godforsaken disc. Most of the episodes that I had seen only seemed to further my conclusion that this show was the reason why my daughter was acting the way that she was acting. Especially with the damning evidence with the episode Caillou in the Circus, and that awful to God temper tantrum that came with it. So for the next few hours, I watched every single disc, with each episode only stopping to use the bathroom or get a drink of water. Once I had gotten to the fourth and final disc, I was met with the last season of the show. They had compacted a lot of episodes in just those 4 discs. Honestly, I was pretty much done with this whole thing at this point. I just wanted to get some sleep and just be done with it. I was going to sit there and close out of the damn thing, but I wound up slipping on the menu and hitting one of the options that led me to yet another episode. The episode started off rather normally, simply with a simple crappy theme song and the like that I had been subjected to literally 500 times already. I simply groaned out of pure annoyance over myself for hitting the fucking play all button by mistake. Once the intro had finally concluded, I was met with the main shot of Caillou's house, in all its painted glory. The main title of the episode was Caillou's Secret. The scene then transitioned over to show the interior of the house, with Caillou making his way downstairs and towards the kitchen, where his mother was there cooking breakfast. Caillou's mother greeted him, but Caillou simply starts the whole thing off with him saying, "I didn't sleep well, Mommy." Caillou said as he groggily hopped up in the chair. Well, sweetie, I think a good breakfast will help wake you up nice and well, Caillou's mother said as she placed the plate of scrambled eggs and jelly toast next to Caillou. Caillou simply ate without saying a word more before he finally finished his meal, thanked his mother, and put his dish into the sink. He still looked rather groggy, and didn't even bother to go up to his room. Instead, he just walked to the living room and sat down on the floor. He didn't even really seem that energetic as he usually is in every episode. He just looks as though he hasn't gotten any sleep that night. His father, Boris, then walks into the scene and greets his son Caillou, who in turn greets him back. Boris doesn't even bother to ask Caillou what was wrong with him. He just sat down in his chair and simply started reading the newspaper. Caillou, now even more tired than before, got up from where he was sitting at and then started making his way to his room, before being called in by his mother down into the kitchen. He begrudgingly made his way downstairs and made his way into the kitchen, only to find his mother staring down at him rather angrily. Yes, Mommy? Caillou said. Caillou, you didn't clean the dishes like I asked you to last night, Caillou's mother said, rather upset. Caillou looked at her in confusion. But, Mommy, I did the dishes yesterday like you asked me. And all the other chores, too, Caillou said in a weak voice. Oh, really, then? Caillou's mother said before making her way towards the batch of obviously clean dishes in front of her. Then what's this? Caillou's mother said before taking one of the plates and smashing them down into the ground, causing it to shatter on impact. Caillou simply cringed a bit. And that's when things went from 1 to 100 right then and there. I told you to wash them with a sponge, Caillou, not the steel wool. Now all the dishes need to be redone because of you. But, Mommy, I didn't mean... I didn't mean to, Caillou began, before being instantly slapped in the face by his mother. Never talk back to me again, young man, Doris retorted. Now you march up there and you clean them right, or I'm going to smash more dishes and make you clean them up. Well, that certainly had went downhill quickly. I can certainly say that I was a bit flabbergasted by the sudden wrath and rage of Caillou's mom, just for something so petty. Hell, the dishes didn't even look dirty or anything. It didn't make sense. I actually had to rub my eyes a bit a couple of times and watch the thing over and over and over again to make sure of it that I hadn't just imagined that due to the fact that I was tired. Caillou simply whimpered as he cleaned up the dishes the right way that his mother had told him to do. Once he was completed, he left the kitchen area and then ran back up to his room in a quick pace. He slowly began to make his way towards the bed and then fell right on it. He started to slowly drift off to sleep when Boris, Caillou's father, burst into the room with a large list held in his hands. Caillou, get up. You're not sleeping again today, Caillou said flatly. Boris said flatly. But, Daddy, I didn't get it to sleep. He was swiftly interrupted by his dad yelling at him to stop talking. Get your work clothes on, Caillou. I need you to finish up the rest of the chores in the house, Boris demanded. But, Caillou murmured. Now! Caillou's father spat, before making his way out of Caillou's room to let him change. Caillou simply sighed and then made his way over towards his drawer and pulled out his gray shirt that he originally used to wear before it was replaced with the yellow one. He just continued to sniffle as he put it on, including changing off his shorts as well. I didn't really understand what was going on, and why exactly his parents were acting the way that they did, but I just kept on watching. Once he had completed changing, he walked out of his room and made his way downstairs and into the basement, where he was met again with his father. Today, Caillou, I need you to clean the basement from top to bottom, Boris ordered. And I don't want to see you out of this basement. I don't want to even see your face until it's done. You hear me, young man? Caillou simply nodded, and then began to start cleaning up the basement as best as he could while Boris went up the stairs and slammed the door shut. However, during the cleaning, Caillou picked up one of the boxes that was needed to be moved underneath the staircase, and a spider immediately crawled onto his hand and bit him hard. Caillou immediately screamed and slapped the spider away and cried out a bit, and then proceeded to fall down to the floor and cried as he held his hand. It was obvious that he was in a lot of pain. Caillou pretty much wound up calling out for his mother. However, she never came. Instead, what I wound up hearing was her sitting there and berating her son, telling him to continue on cleaning and to shut up. Caillou simply sniffled at that point and continued on working. The festering wound that was the spider bite continuously getting worse as the episode continued on going. Once he was finished, Caillou then proceeded to walk up the stairs and then make his way into the kitchen for lunch, I guess. However, this time around, Doris just turned to Caillou, threw a sandwich at him, and then told him to go back to downstairs and continue cleaning. Caillou just did what he was told, shockingly enough. He didn't fight back, he didn't retaliate, he didn't do any of that. Instead, he just took the sandwich and then went back down to the basement. He opened up the sandwich only to find that there was nothing in it. It was just 2 slices of bread. He ate it, and then went back doing what he was doing. And it continued on this way a couple of times. Every time Caillou would go upstairs to either use the bathroom or get a snack or even so much as get a glass of water, his parents would always wind up finding him and then scream and yell at him, and to the point of, well, I don't know. They just continuously screamed and yelled at him for no honest-to-God reason. And every time they got done screaming at him, Caillou would simply just go right back down to the basement and continue doing what he was doing, oftentimes not being able to do what he wanted to do. I mean, this went on for a good portion of the episode. A good portion of it. And then, once Caillou had finally finished cleaning the basement, he went back up the stairs one last time, and then proceeded to tell his father that he was done cleaning. Boris then proceeded to go down into the basement, and then look around for a bit, I guess, before going right back up, and then saying, "Caillou, can you come here for a second?" he said. Caillou immediately did, and what I saw completely fucked with my head at what I had seen. Boris proceeded to push Caillou down the stairs of the basement. I am not shitting any of you when I say that. He literally pushed him down. Caillou's screams could be heard as he fell down the stairs, and when he finally landed at the bottom of the staircase, it looked as though his leg had been broken. Boris, on the other hand, didn't seem to care, and said, "You didn't clean it right. You better finish this up correctly, or you are not getting any dinner tonight." And then after that, he slammed the door shut once more, leaving Caillou in a whole lot of pain. I didn't know what I was looking at. I mean, what the fuck was I watching? This didn't make any remote kind of sense, and it definitely wasn't something that should have been, that could have, it just made no sense. Caillou simply got up as best as he could, trying to balance himself on the walls to make sure that he didn't stand on his broken leg. He then started cleaning up again, and then afterwards, when he was finally done, he made his way back upstairs as best as he could. His arm was now festering to the point where it looked entirely purple due to the spider bite, and his entire leg was just bent in an angle that wasn't normal for any kind of kid. I honestly expected there to be something good with this episode, but unfortunately that just wasn't the case. The two parents then proceeded to walk up to Caillou and then berate him again, yelling at him, screaming at him, saying really vicious things that just, I don't even know, just made me question the legitimacy of what I was looking at. They then proceeded to sit there and, quite literally, throw him to his room. However, once Caillou had entered into it, he simply just knelt down on his knees and said, "Why did they treat me so badly? What did I ever do to them?" And it was then that Caillou immediately stiffened up, before finally falling to the ground and writhing a little bit before immediately going limp. It was kind of obvious that the spider bite, whatever it had been poisonous and had killed him right then and there. The episode then wound up fading out and then ended right there with no credits or anything. I remember just staring at my TV screen, my brain likely in the process of literally melting out of my ears like chocolate, while trying to just comprehend what the hell I just watched. What was that? I mean, seriously, that episode was just downright cruel and messed up. Honestly, the entire concept of that episode alone looked like something that a person on Go Animate would wind up making. I mean, why was this an episode? Was this even an episode? What was this? Not only that, but the entire thing was just confusing as all hell. I mean, what was the purpose and what was the story even trying to tell? I mean, even before, what was this? Was this even an episode? And if it was made, why? I couldn't even come up with any kind of possible theory with any of this. I mean, maybe this was supposed to be some kind of anti-abuse PSA of some sort. I mean, but out of all the shows they used, why Caillou? I honestly have no honest-to-God idea about what this episode was doing or what it was trying to say. At least, I kind of had a bit of an explanation for why my daughter was acting out the way that she did. Or at least I thought, as best as I could. I wound up taking the DVD out of the thing and just putting it back in its case, and placing it off to the side and going right back to sleep. I slept fine that night, although, when I woke up and saw the box set DVD that I was looking at, I just wanted to get rid of it right then and there. But of course I knew I had to talk to my daughter first. So I had gotten up and then had sat down on the kitchen table. My bitch of a wife had already gone to work, so I was completely free from her berations again. I had made myself some coffee, and just as I was about to sit there and take a couple of sips of it when I sat down, I saw that my daughter had woken up and came out of her room. She looked extremely miserable, and I could honestly tell that she had been crying a lot. I was going to ask her what was wrong, but instead, she simply ran up to me, crying, and proceeded to give me the biggest hug I could give. She then let out a plethora of apologies to me for the way that she had acted yesterday, and pretty much the entire month, and practically begged for my forgiveness. Of course, I accepted her apology, thanking her for being so sweet, like she always was, and knowing that, she was being serious about what she was doing. And then afterwards, I then proceeded to sit her down at the table for a quick conversation about what could have caused that behavior. Sweetie, I want to ask you a question. That Caillou show that I bought you, do you think that was the reason why you were acting up the way that you did? Yes, Daddy, Emily told me. I thought it would be... I don't know. I thought that was how you should act. Well, sweetie, you do know that that's not how a person should act. Caillou is not the kind of person to ever look up to. I mean, he's a bad influence, honestly, and it's kind of, well, Emily, what I'm trying to say is this. This show is a huge bad influence on you, and honestly, I've looked through it, and what do you think we should do about this? What do you think we should do with these DVDs? If they're causing you to act up like this, what do you think we should do? I asked her. Get rid of them. I never want to watch Caillou ever again, was her response. I smiled at her, patted her head, and with the DVDs in hand, I took her out to the garbage can and had her throw them away. The garbage man wound up coming a little bit afterwards and taking the trash and the DVDs away in the process. Honestly, it was a good riddance to never have to even be bothered with with those shows ever again. I then wound up taking her back outside and then began making her some breakfast. As I was preparing the bacon and the eggs for her breakfast that morning, I decided to ask her about the episode that I had seen and ask what that had done to her. Hey Emily, if you don't mind me asking, did that episode of Caillou with his abusive parents happen to do anything? You know, did it make you upset? Did it make you feel bad? Did you think that was how I was going to act? I mean, was that the reason why you were acting up the way that you did? I mean, besides the bratty nature of Caillou, you can tell me. I won't be mad. I just want to know. She then wound up turning to me, a little bit puzzled at what I was saying. What are you talking about, Dad? She asked me. You know, that Caillou episode with him getting forced to clean up the basement, getting hurt, getting beaten up. You know, that one, sweetie. I mean, did that make you think that something was gonna happen? Because I guarantee you, it's not. At least not on my watch. I mean, did it trigger any memories or anything? I asked again. Dad, I don't know what you're talking about. I only got up to disc 2 on that show before we got rid of it, she said. So you didn't see that episode? No. What did you see? She asked me. I simply stood there for a bit, shock washing over me as the eggs that I was cooking had started to burn. Turns out that episode wasn't the cause of her bad behavior. And honestly, if that was the case, then honestly, what the fuck was that episode? Well, what was it? I don't even know. As of right now, I pretty much wind up completely throwing out any memories of that episode from my mind. It was relatively easy to do, especially knowing how my wife was. But to end this all off on a rather happier note, more or less, my wife and I are getting a divorce. In fact, I actually was the one that managed to start the divorce process up. It was a wonderful kind of thing to do. And what I think was even better was the fact that her family actually turned against her. They actually spoke on my behalf, and because of it, not only was she pretty much jailed for abuse, she actually also was charged for, well, violating me numerous times as well. And because of it, she's in jail now. Permanently. For life. For what she did. I have custody of my daughter now. And it's amazing to finally be freed from that woman. It was a wonderful feeling, to be honest. It was great. I loved every ounce of it. I do occasionally think about that episode every so often. But of course, it's not really that often, to be fair. The one thing I'm just glad about right now is that my daughter's with me, and that my wife can no longer torment me anymore. It's a blessing, to be honest. It really is. But one last thing to really say is that never take any shit from anyone who's doing that to you. Whether it be your husband, your wife, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whoever it is. Don't ever take their shit. Because I wound up taking enough shit from her as much as I did. Just don't take anything from it, and do everything that you can to try and make sure of it, that it never happens to you. And if it ever starts up, tell that person to fuck off and never go near you ever again.
In fear and surprise, as your eyes widen, your mouth goes dry with each battered breath. You try to scream, your mind begs to leave, glued to your computer screen. The killers they slash, the tapes burn and crash. The cartridge you bought will be your final haunt. The rituals of hate will seal your fate. The tears you shed will be from the fear-gripping horde-driven nightmarish gore-filled, terrorizing, hateful, burning, violent, rage-inducing, knife-slashing, blood-splattering, silent screams. Only time will tell if you will escape this online hell. Your horror-filled obsessions will come with its own regressions. Your pathetic screams will not be heeded in any way, because your nightmares will come at any day.